All right, everyone. We have a bit of a different web news this week. I'm gonna let Mike take it away in a minute here, but we have Sean, one of our patrons from rabbitwerks JavaScript, on the line. I'll kind of pass it off to him for a little brief introduction, and then we're gonna do this sort of brand new sort of web news group conversation.
Hey everybody, my name is Sean and I work under the name of rabbitwerks JavaScript. I primarily do live coding sessions on YouTube featuring projects built in Vue.js, but also do basic programming and other video tutorials as well, so make sure to check that out. And I'm happy to be on the HTML All the Things podcast today talking about Vue.js.
Let's do it. Welcome aboard, Sean. It's been good to get to know you in the Patreon, in the Discord, so that's been awesome. So let's jump right into the web news. So web news.
I heard that. Wait a second here. I heard that self plug.
Yeah.
I heard that. Oh, we have a Discord, do we? Yeah.
What was the self plug?
The shameless. Slogan? It's Mike's shameless self plug saga.
Oh my god, it's just ridiculous.
Alliteration. I think that's what it's called. Alliteration is fantastic. It is fantastic.
It's also a tongue twister, so you're going to be having fun saying that all the time.
Hell yeah.
I accept that. All right, so let's jump into the web news here. This week, we're going to be talking about the Vue 3.0 controversy. So I know some people probably are not interested in Vue.js and stuff like that, but I think it's still kind of relevant to hear about how Vue is like a really popular framework. It's gotten to be pretty big over the last 5 years. I think it's been out even. And a lot of people have been adopting it, and a lot of people have been kind of waiting for the 3.0 release, because usually when a platform matures, you don't get too many changes as you go, and as soon as they mature to like a 3.0 release, or after a 5-year period, you're more likely to start seeing stuff in production because people know that there's stability there and stuff like that. So people have been waiting for any sort of news on when the 3.0 release is going to be, what is going to be included and stuff like that. And a few days ago now, Evan Yu, I think his name is, he released his proposal for the next release, and it's not set in stone. It's something that he released kind of like to get feedback from the community, and a lot of stuff has gone on since then. So I'm going to kind of recap what the release is going to do, and why there's controversy, and what kind of I think about it, and we'll see what the team thinks about it as well here. So the main difference between Vue 2.0 and a Vue 3.0 is they're adding something called a function-based API. So what that means is, before we were using object-based API, which is what everyone's familiar with Vue. Like, you see the data object, you see the method object, you see the watcher object, you see all these objects, and it's very distinctly separated. So that's the big thing that you have to know. Everything that you kind of do in Vue is very distinctly separated based on what life cycle, what you're trying to do in it. If you're trying to do something on created, so like on load, that's going to be in a different block of code than something that's going to be on computed, which means that something's changed. So essentially, that's how Vue is right now. What they want to do is they want to create an object, a function that is able to use any of those lifecycle hooks whenever you want inside that function. So the function will be called setup, and inside of setup, you'll be able to then use any of the stuff that I was just talking about. So the created, the computed, like any sort of lifecycle thing you can think of, on destroy, stuff like that. Everything will be usable inside of that setup function. What that means is that the entire structure of Vue, as we know it, has been changed, or will be changed with this new function-based API. And that's what people are kind of up in arms about, because it's a pretty radical change structurally to anyone's code. The one thing that they have done is they did announce, initially they announced that there will be support for the 2.0 stuff. So all of your object-based API stuff, the stuff that's separated, will be still supported, and it will be backwards compatible and stuff like that. And the problem that they did was they used the word deprecated. It will be deprecated. And everyone kind of freaked out about that word, because usually what that means is it's not being supported anymore, and usually in the next version it will be dropped. And everyone's like, well, I've put so much effort into learning this new system. I know this system pretty damn well. Why is it that like I have to go and learn a completely new system, which is kind of a an interesting take on the React way of doing things. So people are saying, well, if I want to, learn how to program in React, why don't I go to React? But there's some serious distinctions between this method and the React method. Like, we're still keeping the same template syntax that there was before. So you're still going to have the single file components with a template on top, all the same kind of code that is in your template. That's being kept. Nothing's being changed there. Obviously, the CSS that's in that same file, that's not being changed. It's just the script tags that are being changed. So you still have the core structure of a Vue.js component. But what the big thing is that, yes, a lot of your functionality will be changed. Now, something that they're also changing, I'm going to just mention a few other things that they want to do with this functional based API. And that one of the things is mixins, which is kind of like external functions that you can call from any component. It's kind of like global functions, essentially. They're going away for a more encapsulated function system. I'm not 100% sure on how that's all going to be working. That's something maybe Sean, you can answer a little bit later on. But even if not, it's kind of one of those things that it's just they're taking away another known factor of Vue, and they're moving on to something completely different. So that's another thing that's kind of not angering people, but like making people hesitant to continue to support their Vue ecosystems and stuff like that. Another thing to learn for them. Another thing that they want to do is they want to focus a lot on type inference. So they want to get TypeScript integration inside of Vue. There's nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. I'm not a huge TypeScript user. I have looked into it a few times. I don't work in large enough teams to warrant the use of TypeScript. I think TypeScript is a very powerful tool if you're working in massive teams and you're constantly adding people to your team. It makes your code a little bit easier to read and a little bit easier to extend, because you know exactly what each variable is, what type each variable is, as we talked about earlier in this episode, actually. So that's something that they want to integrate. And I don't know if it's going to be an optional integration or not. Maybe someone can chime in on that. I kind of hope it's not. It is optional. Sorry. Because again, I like the dynamically typed stuff that JavaScript has. I don't think that's going away anytime soon, to be honest. That's just my prediction.
Yeah, I think that for TypeScript, I think what it's going to be is an optional plugin, just like when right now we use the Vue CLI to enable TypeScript support, or just use regular JavaScript, because TypeScript can be tricky. I know that when I was first getting into reactive frameworks, first thing I jumped into was Angular, and it was, on top of learning a reactive framework, having to pick up TypeScript along with that was just too much for me to comprehend at the time, and so it actually put me off to the whole thing to begin with. I think if new developers are kind of forced into the TypeScript world, it might alienate them a little bit, but we'll have to see, because TypeScript is also very powerful.
I agree. And like that's for some people. The other thing is that TypeScript, if you're coming from something like a C# or a Java background, TypeScript might actually be something that you're more comfortable with. So I understand if you're like a new web developer per se, and you like the typing, but I agree with Sean in the fact that if you're just coming and first learning programming, I think it's almost easier to wrap your head around something that's dynamically typed than typed. And that could be a controversial statement, to be honest, because I have heard a lot of push towards more typed stuff, and the fact that typed is better and stuff like that. And I understand that whole argument. I'm just saying, like, as a personal note, I've done both. And when I got comfortable with dynamic typing, I understood the power of it and the ease of learning of it. So that's just another perspective, I think.
I have a real brief interjection.
Go ahead.
And that interjection is that the group recording has failed, so I will require everyone's files. And this can make it into the episode. That's fine. It just stopped recording. So yeah, I just want to make sure that everyone is recording individually.
Okay.
We've renamed this web news to Technical Aside.
No, Technical Aside is a terrible one.
It is.
Think of an alliteration.
At least it's like it's not. It's a name of a segment. It's not the name of the repeat. Like, web news sounds good. You know what I'm trying to say? But yeah, the subtitle of web news can be bad. Maybe we should shoot for that weekly. Just have a bad web news name where people are like, oh God, what do these guys talk about now?
Technical.
Just like a real dumb way to say something. Like, technical tiptoeing.
Oh God.
Yeah, that's a good
Oh,
one.
that is
Okay.
terrible.
Well, anyway, back to the Vue.js and back to maybe muting myself is what broke it, but I'm gonna click the button again. So
All right. Well, we'll see how that works. It still seems to be recording. All right. So let's carry on.
Okay.
So I'm essentially at the end of my spiel here with the Vue.js stuff. Again, the biggest change here is we're going from object-based to function-based. It's going to be a big structural change. There are some other negatives that we could talk about down the road, but the biggest negative is the fact that people will have to kind of relearn how to do their Vue.js code. And if they want to upgrade their Vue.js code to function-based API, it's going to be a significant undertaking. It's not going to be as easy as, click here and it's upgraded. Now, having said that, I did already kind of look online and I found some Twitter talk and stuff like that of people already creating auto upgraders to their code. I don't know how well these are going to work. I have very little, I don't think they're going to work that well. I don't think a massive project with hundreds of files is going to be able to click on a button and upgrade it completely to a function-based API. But I mean, it's possible. I've seen, again, I saw a little example of someone upgrading a little bit of code and it seemed to work pretty well. So hopefully that is something that can happen in the future. Having said that, there was a couple of things that came out just like today, I think, where Evan Yu, the creator of Vue.js, came out and said, okay, I've listened to all of your feedback. We are no longer going to say the word deprecated. That's been taken out. So we're not deprecating the 2.0 object-based APIs anymore. What we're going to do is we're going to support them for the foreseeable future, 3.0, probably even 4.0 as far as I know. And we're going to have only one build. So the thing I didn't mention before was the fact that they were going to do two builds, one lean build where it only had the function-based, the new API, and one kind of compatibility build or legacy build, which will have both kind of within it, and you'll be able to kind of do like backwards compatibility. Now they're going to take that away. They said like that's too complicated to maintain. We're going to have one build that's going to have everything in it, and we're going to be supporting it for the foreseeable future. Like 3.0 and 4.0, that could be a 3-4 year cycle. That's pretty long for you to transfer your code to function based, or for them to kind of vet out if function based is something they want to move forward with. Maybe they'll drop support for function based, right? Like we don't know what's going to happen, but it seems like a good amount of time for you to put your trust into Vue. At least that's my opinion. I've taken my own look at the function based API, the new API that they're promoting, and I personally see the benefit of it a lot. I can see myself slowly converting to it as I go. Like I don't want to, commit to the fact that I'm going to just sit there and convert all my code right to function based. But I think as I go forward, I will definitely try it out. And if I get into the rhythm of writing function based code, it could be a cleaner way of writing code. I think it is more involved. That's my biggest negative with it. I like Vue.js because it's a simpler framework. It's easier to learn. The function-based API is not as easy as the object-based API to learn. So that, I think, in my opinion, that is a huge negative, because a lot of people learning a framework will promote it in the future and can maintain it as it goes. So we're almost going to be losing that with this function-based API. But again, if the old API is still supported, if they're going to be still improving it, maybe I don't know if they've mentioned anything about that. I doubt they're going to improve it, but it's in a pretty good state anyway. Then I think that the newer generation of Vue users will still be able to kind of start quickly. And then maybe as they start learning their object-based API stuff and how the lifecycle stuff works, maybe they'll see the reasoning behind the function-based API and start converting to that. That's my opinion. I don't think it was blown out completely out of proportion. The fact that everything is going like Angular 2 to 3, that used to be the big controversy that happened, and that Angular lost a lot of support because they did a massive change, infrastructure change. Now it's kind of, and they lost their superiority to React in that case, in that scenario, because people had to go back and redo their code essentially to upgrade their system, where they could just go and rewrite that code in React or a different framework and hope that one doesn't change. So with that being said, I'm just going to ask a question here. Whoever wants, they can answer it. Will needing to support both the object and function-based APIs stretch the Vue team too thin? What do you think?
it kind of sounds like, I'm an outsider here, to be totally clear. So like, I've used Vue.js to like lay out some to like lay out some UIs. So I mean, if I'm talking incorrectly about it, I mean, yes, I probably am. But as like just a general web developer, one of the things that I can kind of think of, and just a person who is like just a general tech enthusiast, is that it kind of sounds like this is a band-aid, if you will. Like they're probably not going to be focused on it. They probably don't care. Like the very fact that they were, and I mean every dev team is different, but the very fact that they announced this new way of doing things with the what's the new way of doing it again? Sorry, it's the functional or whatever. What's the official name of
The
it or
new
whatever?
way is the function-based API.
Yeah, so the function-based API. So the very fact that they announced that probably means that they've been working on it for a long time. It's been engineered, ideas been thrown around, et cetera, and it's probably near complete and like ready for public consumption in terms of like at least at least in terms of an announcement, not necessarily using it yet, right? With that being said, now they would have to, I assume they added features to Vue 3.0 that could be useful in both the old and the new way. So now it's like, do they have to go back and add said features into the old way as well, or are they just going to leave the old way, and so it'll be like kind of like a natural phase out where you can learn the old way, but the new way has like 10 new features or whatever, and as they keep going through versions, slowly but surely people will be like, well, don't use the old way because you're not getting features, you're not getting the updates as much. Like you can still use it, but it's not as up to date, and maybe they'll keep some stuff out of like security problems or something like that. Like maybe they'll fix things that arise in the old way, but to me it kind of sounds like they're band-aiding the backlash. And actually I have a question about that. Is this a I'll use the band-aid analogy again. Is this a band-aid in which they shouldn't continue going forward with the old way and actually should have gone with this new way throughout the whole time, and they're just like, all right, it's time, we have to do this now for the betterment of the framework moving forward? Or is this more so just like a functional change and they could actually keep the old way going forward? Like, is there a massive benefit, maybe not necessarily in Vue 3, but is there like a massive benefit moving forward from an engineering perspective that they can't achieve with the old method?
Yeah, so I think I could touch on that a little bit. I think it's more so the first part of your first part of your answer about how this is the time to do it. So back in I think it was VueConf Toronto or US, when they were talking about, or Evan Yu was talking about his the Vue 3 release. Basically, this new rewrite of the code base is going to make it pretty much 100 times faster, or 100% faster, I'm sorry, and in as far as performance and all of the logic and code and stuff that needs to run and all that. I mean, we can probably link the video if people want to check that out. He does a better job of explaining it, but based on my understanding, the code base between at Vue 2.0 or 2.7 or whatever it's at now, it's pretty much ran up to its limitations as far as what it can do because of how reactive properties and data work, because of mix-ins and like the watch property. All that stuff was really getting pushed to its limit as far as how much it can handle and perform without things falling apart and not working in the way that is intended, and introducing a lot of issues and stuff into the code base. So I think this rewrite is really helping with that. One example being with that is like the data object or the new setup object or whatever, where all of our reactive stuff before in Vue, when you use Vue 2.0, the data properties aren't truly reactive. They're based on a get and a set, publish subscribe kind of like pattern. So the core difference between that and with Vue 3 is that they're going to be using proxies to actually proxy the value as reference, versus actually having that value in there, as far as my understanding. And what that'll do is it reduces it basically just calls that data type or that data value as a reference versus having to call it back, return it and evaluate a function essentially a getter to grab that value out of some sort of property and then have to set it. So it's kind of just like proxies our code that we're writing to that value that's stored inside of our internal logic. So I think that's like an example of one of the main roadblocks that they were running into for Vue 2 versus Vue 3, that this new rewrite is going to allow for better performance, especially with things like Svelte coming out and gaining popularity because of the minimal bundle size that it produces and the speed that it has for the size of the applications that are coming out. I think that stuff is really becoming more and more important, and without this new rewrite, Vue just wasn't able to keep up with the ever-changing, growing advancements. I mean, one thing to look at with Vue is like when you instantiate a Vue instance, you get, whether you like it or not, you get everything is loaded into there. So whether you're accessing, your computed properties or your lifecycle hooks and all that stuff, those are all being called regardless of if you need it. So specifically, like the lifecycle hooks being changed to functions, you can just pull in the lifecycle hooks. You can pull in the data property or the data objects, blah blah blah. Like you can pull in what is it, computed and all. And I should look at the code really quick. Let's see. So you can pull in stuff like, your props, you pull in value from Vue, kind of like how React works. So you pull in all these different, parts of the framework, the parts that you only need, versus having everything loaded in there to start with. So I think that's another key beneficial point to this new rewrite as far as the performance end of it as well, and the efficiency of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I see a lot of value in it. And I am a tiny bit disappointed that they're removing the regular build, like the lean build without Vue 2.0 stuff in it. Mm-hmm. Because I can see that, like I would try to load that and try to like play around with it. I wouldn't use it in production yet and stuff like that, but I could see that being a good thing to have. But I also understand like the backlash and why they reverted to just one build for at least 3.0. Again, like I do like the functional side of it. I see a lot of benefit. Like I really like the fact that you can put the computed property, you can put the props wherever you want. You can kind of use them and group them as you want. That's my biggest thing, is like you can make functions that have all of the contained logic that they need to do, including all of their life cycles contained into one function, instead of having them broken up. And having a large function that does a lot of things broken up into different lifecycle objects is a little bit harder to maintain. I have personally witnessed it. I've personally seen it. Like I'm working in a small team right now where we're writing a Vue.js code base, and I had to specifically explain the fact that this is one function, but it's performing stuff in the created property. It's also waiting for stuff to happen in the computed property. Like that's broken up code, that's broken up functionality into different blocks, even though it's performing kind of one coherent piece. So with this new API, with function-based API, you'll be able to organize a lot better. It is harder to architect. Like when you're looking at it from just a pure architecture perspective, like how do you create blocks of code? It could create spaghetti code. And in that sense, like you could just have a bunch of like up and down, like a big, created function that's just like plopped into your code that doesn't make sense to be there. It does require a little bit more foresight when you're creating the code than the regular object-based API. That's where I see it that's where I see the fight. Like the fight between functions. Like it's so easy to create structured code in object-based API, but it's so much better to create function code in function-based API. And that's why I believe that this intermediary step that they're doing with supporting the older API is a smart move on their part, because they already have a huge user base. If they didn't have a huge user base, this wouldn't be a talk. Like no one would be talking about this. Like Sean mentioned Svelte. That's not a huge user base yet. It is growing very quickly. They're able to do the things that they do because they are a small user base and stuff like that. But if they were to do a change just like Vue.js just proposed, they would also get some backlash. Not as big, but they would get some backlash. Now Vue is already a huge platform. It's getting a huge amount of backlash because people are already used to it. That's how it works with a lot of large platforms. Think about Facebook doing any sort of changes back in the day, like 10 years ago, 5 years ago, any sort of change with Facebook. And I know we've talked about this on the podcast before. There was always some outcry. This is very similar on a more professional level, on a more developer level, obviously, because a lot of people are invested in Vue in their professional life at this point. A lot of people are invested in Vue in their learning. So they're worried that all this investment that they've done is gone to nothing. And this intermediary step, or band-aid as Matt put it, is a really good way of kind of not silencing those people, but calming those people down and being like, listen, we understand your concern. We are going to be supporting the other method. As Matt pointed out, they probably won't be adding many features to it, but to counterpoint that, like, it's already pretty feature rich, in my opinion. Like, you don't really need much in the forms of like being able to do anything inside of Vue 2.0 that you couldn't do. Like, so Vue 3.0 is a very much an architectural and performance change. It's not so much like, oh, I can do like a bunch of more things. Yes, you can do everything you can do in 2.0, and there's a few things you can do more elegantly now in 3.0. But essentially it's the same thing. Like, you're accomplishing the same tasks. You just might be doing them slightly faster, kind of thing. So that's not a huge concern for me. I think the thing that's going to be a little bit of a challenge is people learning Vue now, like where, like Matt said, like, where do you hop into Vue? Like, should you invest your time learning object-based API, or should you just hop into function-based API? I'm wondering what your guys' take is on that. Like, where should people start learning Vue at this point?
Right. Well, that's a good question. That's a funny question, because like I've been actually doing on my YouTube channel, we've been doing basically a Vue Basics series the last number of weeks, and that's going over all the basics and ins and outs of using Vue 2.0, and now just a handful of months later, Vue 3 is going to be coming out in beta, or whatever the schedule is for that. But I think that's a good question. Another question, and before I can talk about that, I'm curious as to, was this something when they're going to be including both the object-based and function-based API, is that something that will be able to be mixed and matched? So,
yes.
Well, then I think that if that's the case, then definitely I think going about learning Vue the old school way now, and then starting to pick up when you start to hit these roadblocks that you run into as you get into more advanced applications, and you realize, oh crap, I need to do this, but I have to run it, I have to run this watch property that runs through, that gets values from props that get set because of data that's called from, a mounted lifecycle hook and stuff, where it's a one function that runs through all of this stuff, where it's going to really bring all that code together and be more concise. And you'll be at the point where you understand how Vue works enough that you will feel comfortable to kind of like look at the new syntax and understand, okay, well, what's going on here, and see the similarities. So I think kind of like a stepping stone approach would be the best of both worlds, because then users get that experience of it, the simplicity and what they're used to and all that stuff, and then when they're ready to like level up their game, so to speak, they can move on to the function-based API. And then another benefit of moving on to the function-based API is once you learn how to use that, then you know how to use React, essentially. It's just like, other than the template, you just got to learn how to use JSX, I guess. But like the core concepts of it, they're so similar in a lot of ways, and they're just becoming more similar, that and really good concepts that both frameworks bring to the table, that I think they're. The thing that I like about Vue and the team behind Vue is that they really do care about their developers, the people that are going to be using their framework. So obviously everybody's been up and out in arms about this whole thing for the last number of days, and they're listening. And it's not just like some customer service person or whatever. It's it's the creator. It's Evan Yu. He's listening to people. He's responding. He's taking feedback and taking it willingly and for what it's worth, and making changes to the plans and stuff like that. So I think that's ultimately, like, Vue really is a framework for the people, by the people, and that is something that will really keep everybody keep everybody interested in Vue because of that aspect of it, whether or not there's big changes like this. And I think a lot of the reaction is people just see, okay, well, it's a lot of jumping to conclusions, you know what I mean? Because people see this stuff isn't very easy to like keep track of when news like this comes out. There's not like, you know, you can't go to like CNN and see the homepage and see all the new updates in the tech world and stuff. It's just, I mean, you can gather a list of stuff, but I think people see the headline, you know, somewhere that, okay, well, you know, Vue is changing dramatically and all your code has to be rewritten, and then they don't further look into it and they just jump to conclusions and they're like, well, what's going on? This is an outrage, blah, 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 and stuff. So people need to also take their time and, you know, look into things and before they make a decision, and understand what changes are going to be made and why they're being made before just, you know, naysaying it as well. So I think there's a lot of personal responsibility that comes into the reaction of stuff like this as well.
Do you think though that like that stepping stone approach is still going to be viable when Vue.js 3 comes out, like let's say fully, like out of beta, or even Vue 4? Like you were saying that you could use the old method as a stepping stone, but if you were a person that was going to learn it, like if I were going to go and learn it beyond the UI layout stuff, if I was going to go learn it today, would it be detrimental to me to learn this new method? Or should I be waiting for that beta to come out and then like just, you know, skip Vue until the beta comes out and then learn that new method? Because if we're talking about that, the original method being knocked out, being phased out, eventually people will have to learn that new method originally, and it kind of sounds like it's more complex.
Mm-hmm.
So like, do you disagree? Maybe like, do you disagree that the original method is going to be phased out, or do you think that they will keep it around just for like a stepping stone purpose? Or like, do you think that it people on Vue.js 3, like in a year, let's say they're on Vue.js 3, do you think that they should be starting with the new method first if they've never touched Vue before, or should they still use the stepping stone? Like, based on today's stuff, of course, you're kind of forced to do the stepping stone, because everything, like all your YouTube tutorials, like literally your YouTube tutorials and everybody else's and all the written tutorials
Mm-hmm.
on anything, it's all this old method. So of course you kind of have to use the stepping stone approach. But when it comes to this new method coming out and the beta comes out in a few months or whatever it is, should you really like is it a waste of time, I guess, is my question. Like, to me, it's like, if something's going to be phased out, it'd be like purchasing a phone or something that you want to keep for 5 years, but the OS is on its last limb. It's like, sure, it'll last you for 2 years maybe, but it's like that phone is donezo at that point. And so I know that's like a different thing than this, but like I think it's kind of the same idea, where like tech companies will phase things out for the betterment of the product. And I'm just, I guess as an outsider, I'm confused as to, is there like a problem with learning the new method first? Do you need that first method?
No, I don't think so. I don't think at all. I mean, I think really what it comes down to is personal preference. If one looks more, you know, clear to read at a glance than the other, then you could start it. Ultimately, if you're just starting out, you're probably not going to be building a monolithic app, so you don't have to worry about too much complexity, and ultimately each way will get you the same result no matter how you go about it, and you'll probably learn the same concepts as well. I think what's going on a little bit differently is like where they might end up being issues is if people start doing, or like when you get into things like custom events and mix-ins and the stuff that can create maintainability issues, then at that point, then looking at the new functions API and seeing how something like the watch method or whatever in Vue 3 can alleviate a lot of those issues that you're coming across. And like, for me to be honest, if I was just looking at Vue today, I think I still would go with the object-based syntax API, just because that looks more understandable to me at a glance. Like, I can look at it and see, okay, this is my data, this is like computed properties, whatever those are, this is watch properties, what are watch functions, whatever those are, and these are my methods, and those are functions that I run. It's a lot more explicit on like kind of like the building blocks of everything. So it does help in that sense, where I think when I look at like the setup, or like the new syntax with the export default setup function instead of data, I think with that they'll have there'll be a little bit more of a learning curve, but I also think that one of the benefits of Vue that they've always brought to the table strongly is their docs. So I have faith that with this new API being released, they'll have really clear, concise docs on what's going on, and where the differences are, and why you would want to do this. And it's just, I mean, you start to use Vue.js and you'll kind of make the distinction. Okay, I can see why they did stuff. I should probably check that out. But I definitely think it's really just, it's an intimidation thing. But it's hard to say. It's like, we'll have to see what happens with the whole ecosystem of the new release, kind of to make more determination on whether learning the object-based syntax first is a stepping stone, or if that's just kind of like it's becoming like a dead end almost.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I agree with your sentiment that you can learn either one based on your familiarity with whatever. Like if you're more comfortable when you see the object based API, you can learn that one, and there's not much detriment, to answer kind of your question, Matt, because you'll learn the basic concepts regardless of which way you choose. And going from one to the other, once you know the basic concepts, is going to be a lot easier anyway. And it might be even valuable for you because you'll get a better grasp of that, the understanding of those basic concepts, like the methods and the structure of like the life cycle, like when the life cycle happens, how to use the life cycle events. If you're just new to programming in general and you're seeing Vue, you're probably going to go object based, in my opinion. Like Sean was saying, it is a lot easier to read. It is a lot easier to maintain a small code base in. It's really clean. I always liked it. Like I never even thought about having a function-based API until they mentioned it. Again, having looked at the function-based API and all the advantages it brings, I see what it is, and I understand how it would benefit me if I were to use it. But it's going to be a lengthy discussion probably when we do start deciding to migrate or not. So I'll have a team meeting, and we'll sit down and we'll have to all lay out our things. Like this is going to be easier to create functional components and function containment, but it's going to be a little bit harder to understand for the newer developers. Now, with that being said, newer developers, I think this is a direct, I wouldn't say attack, but I think this is a direct hit on the React devs, trying to get them to come over to the Vue side. I think this is one of the, like, the performance and everything, obviously, but a huge advantage with this kind of change and with this integration is if I'm a React dev and I've been hearing about Vue all this time, and I go and look at function-based APIs, I'm like, holy, I already know this. I can just go in and start using Vue and start using the framework. So I think it's going to bring a lot of React devs straight to Vue, and I believe that's kind of like the back in mind intention. That's kind of where I'm thinking with it.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of it. Like I was saying, once you learn this new syntax of Vue, then you can go write React fairly easily. It'll be a lot of really interchangeable. And I think that's a good point, because I think what this will do is really once that kind of happens, the React devs kind of have, if it does happen, I mean, who knows for sure, we'll have to see, but if they do start migrating over to Vue more and more, I think we'll start to see Vue pop up in the workplace a lot more commonly in that case, because they'll have experienced developers that have been working in the field now, endorsing this new framework that up until now has had a lot of hype around it, but it doesn't have that official corporate backing and lifelong backing to make sure that enterprises want to write their applications in it, or companies want to write their applications in it. So it'll be interesting. I think this change, and then what's going on in the whole Svelte world is really going to upshift, or is really going to shift around a lot of things in the development community. It'll be interesting to see what happens for sure.
Do changes like this do they sort of give credit to people who are learning, who are like brand new to programming right now? They want to become a web developer, but maybe they don't want to do it professionally because they don't want to work in a team. They just want to work by themselves. Do changes like this and uprooting things like this, do they actually promote people learning just straight up vanilla JavaScript as a sort of, because like I mean, there's the new ES versions and that type of thing, but generally speaking, it's not like every year you're worried about 3/4 of your features becoming deprecated and then eventually dropped completely. It's more, obviously you would learn Vue.js to maybe get a job at a place that uses Vue.js, or maybe because the market is screaming for it. Whereas if you're just working by yourself, like if I wanted, like personally, if I wanted to, like today, wanted to make my own app, like my own web app, and I was doing it in Vue, and I, was learning Vue because that's the stage I would be at, and they were like, we're going to uproot all this, I would probably be like, okay, Control A, delete, yes, and I'm just going to go with the vanilla JavaScript, because at the end of the day here, that's not going to get deleted tomorrow. That's going to maybe get deleted in, or only like a part of it is going to get deleted in like 10 years, unless there's something massive that happens in the industry. But just in terms of trends, like who's to say Vue.js 4 isn't going to uproot a whole bunch of stuff? Who's to say that? Like, we don't know the future. And I think it was actually in this episode, because like I said, this is recorded separately, but I think it was in this episode that we had said that like vanilla is like the ES versions are more like they respect the older versions more, whereas these like Vue and all this stuff is like the vision of somebody else. It's not the vision of the committee of the people who like essentially maintain and like create the language. This is a layer on top of JavaScript. So
Yeah.
you know what I'm trying to say? Like, so at the end of the day here, I'm kind of losing like going toward a framework. To me, even though we run like a small web development company, it's losing its luster for me, because for me moving around UI elements, I kind of don't think it's worth investing time and then just be like, oh, by the way, Matt, we need you to rip all that in pieces because it needs to be redone now. It's like, well, that's not going to generate me any more money. I don't really care. And at the end of the day, if I were to make an app myself, or even with just like one other person, I don't see the benefits of a framework that much. In a larger team, like I would say small as in like 5, like I would say 5 and up, I could see people using frameworks, and like things like Tailwind CSS, like even because like I said, I'm more UI. Tailwind CSS, I absolutely see the benefit of that, and I do stuff like that. But at the end of the day here, if Tailwind CSS tries to uproot all of its stuff, I'd be like, okay, the hell with this. I'm just going to do it in CSS. I don't know whether I'm too extreme in dropping things, but
yeah, I'm gonna say you're too extreme. Let me try to tackle this one. And it was a good call out because it is this episode that we're talking about the committees and stuff in, and you're definitely 100% correct that backing yourself with vanilla JS is a lot more functional for yourself, but it's not mutually exclusive in my opinion. Knowing vanilla JS and having a good understanding of it will give you the opportunity to go into any framework at any time and learn it. It's not that big of an undertaking when you know vanilla JS and the way it works, to go into a Vue.js framework, regardless of which way it goes, functional, object, and picking it up. It's not like you're like, it's a day, 2-3 day setup, maybe at most, and then you're kind of off to the races with it. Maybe even less sometimes, depending on how familiar you are. It's not a huge undertaking. It's not like you're learning a completely new language. You're just learning a different functionality of the language with a couple of specific subsets that you can easily just be like, in the documentation, just Google or like search for it, and you can know exactly, like copy paste exactly how to do it. That's the point that I want to get across, is when you're going into frameworks, they are really powerful. They're great for working in teams, but they're great for working on yourself too, by yourself, and learning how to learn new frameworks, learning how to jump from framework to framework, from functionality to functionality, and how to adopt code and stuff like that is also a huge skill for everyone. So I don't think you should abandon a framework because of something like this, especially with the way that they're handling it so far. I say so far because of course things can change, but so far it's been very civil. Like I said, they didn't release that, oh, we're doing this and we're not listening to any feedback. They released literally a request for feedback, and they're like, none of this is in stone. We are willing to change all of this if we get enough feedback for it. But they got mixed feedback. It wasn't all bad. It was just the loudest people were saying that this is terrible and this is worse and stuff like that. And that's still being propagated around the internet. But if you go in and you look into the civilized discussions that are happening on their GitHub request for change, you can see that there are people that are backing this change, and there are people that are seeing the opportunity that it brings, and there are people that are thankful for them to release something like this for us to talk about. Because again, it's not like a company that will just release something and just do it, and you have no say. We, like, people literally have a say in this case. Like Sean was saying, it's for the people. Like, it's made by the people for the people. That's a big proponent of Vue.js, whereas React is made by Facebook for Facebook. There's positives and negatives to both. I actually wanted to mention a little bit of the fact that, like, yes, React is owned by Facebook, and this would, it is a slight advantage in some ways, because although Facebook is the the evil monster and stuff like that, as we've been reading, they do have a very large team, and they do have a very large need for their own technology. So any sort of issues in their own technologies, any sort of large changes like this would create a big issue in their own technologies and wouldn't happen. I can see the reason why people use it, for its stability and its future readiness. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a big team of people. Like, Facebook is literally built on React. Instagram is literally built on React. So if they have any issues inside of React, they're very, very, very likely to go and fix it for you. And they're allowing you to use it. Now, obviously, the negative of that is they're allowing you to use it. At any point, they can be like, oh, not allowing you to use React anymore, or here's a community version of React, here's our internal version, we're not updating the community version anymore. Like, that could happen. And
I mean, that could happen anywhere, though. Like,
correct,
the Vue guy could just be like, you know what, that's it. Vue 3, that's mine. See you later, boys. Like,
yeah. But it is open source, so anyone that's taken it and made their own, like, strand of it, like, it's a little bit more open, like, in that way. But you're right. Evan, you could easily screw it up and go anywhere. Anyway, so the point that you're making, Matt, is learn vanilla JavaScript. That's the point of this episode. In fact, learn vanilla JavaScript so that it doesn't matter what the frameworks are. What, like Sean was saying about Svelte, that's coming out. Maybe that'll be the next big framework. It doesn't matter, because vanilla JavaScript, how those frameworks work. You can switch between them without any sort of issue. So again, your point, Matt, was the fact that we shouldn't learn any frameworks. I don't believe that's the correct point, because it's not that hard to pick up a framework. It's not like you're learning a completely new language. When you know the functionality of it, when you know what you need to do, it's pretty simple and not easy. It's not easy for sure, but it's pretty, like, straightforward what you need to do to be able to pick it up and kind of put it into place. There's a lot of people talking, like Sean himself is doing a tutorial series. There's plenty of other people doing tutorial series. Like, it's kind of one of those things that it builds the community, it builds information, it builds different functionalities. Like, someone at some point, Vue will make something, and they might have already done it, that JavaScript themselves sees as a huge plus. Like I was saying before, earlier in the episode, that templating syntax that was made, like, that was made by a framework, and JavaScript's like, oh, that's amazing, let's add that into our vanilla JavaScript, like with ES6. So that's why it's important to kind of continue to support framework, continue to use them, be able to switch between them. The more you can switch between, the more, like, on your resume, you can say, yeah, I know Vue.js, I know React, I know all that stuff. But the main thing is I can switch between frameworks really quickly, because my vanilla JavaScript is extremely, well created, and the base there is extremely put. Like, it's huge.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. I often see from beginners, they have the question, what framework should I learn first? And I think that their best answer for that is none of them. Learn vanilla JavaScript well, and learn up until, like, ES6 at least, because that's pretty much, becoming the standard very quickly, and pretty soon we won't even need transpilers and stuff in order to write ES6 code and have it run in the browser without any issues. And so it's just kind of the way of the world moving forward. But you're right. It's like it's trying to learn a framework without having a solid understanding of JavaScript is kind of like trying to build a house without knowing how to use any of the tools, or what materials to use and stuff. You're gonna end up with something, but it's gonna probably be broken. And one other point I wanted to touch on really quick was that, like, with the comparison between like React and Angular versus like a community driven or open source projects such as Vue, is I'm not sure about the community, the development community of React and Angular. I'm not sure how open they are to outside pull requests and stuff. But I know that like with Vue, they're always open to pull requests and code improvements and all these different features, and they're very open, communicative with the community. And I feel like that's really important because that gives people, whether they go and change stuff and do drastic changes and stuff, the fact that they have that solid connection to the community, it kind of gives people a sense of ownership to it. I mean, myself, I have a number of docs edits that are merged into the Vue native docs over in that repo and stuff, and that it gives me a sense of ownership to it. And I think that's important because people they grab an kind of like an attachment to it, and it makes the longevity of the project exponentially longer, essentially, because they have that community driven thing where it's not just like a big machine pumping out code that you're allowed to use kind of thing. So in that aspect, but yeah, I don't think people can stress enough how important it is to learn the fundamentals of vanilla JavaScript, to be honest, because I mean, if I were to look at this stuff without really knowing what an arrow function is, like this class functions API, I would be lost. I'd be like, there's this thing and it's got like this function arrow thing and it's just going into this props ID thing, and then there's this async word, and then that's got an ID thing, and that's another arrow thing, and I'm so lost at this point, and that's just the first line of this function. And so to understand, okay, well, this is a function, it's an implicit return, this is the parameters, how you pass it in, this is what async await is and stuff. Once you understand that stuff, then being able to look at a function API like this, whether you've never even seen Vue in the first place, even if you've never seen the object-based API, if you have a solid understanding of ES6, ES6, vanilla ES6 or whatever, then being able to look at something like the function API or React or, whatever, TypeScript or whatever, Angular, is going to make all of that much more easy. It's going to be able, like you said, Mike, you'll be able to hop between frameworks like it's, just changing clothes essentially. So you'll have no issue with it, and that's ultimately what will give you the best setup for a really good developer career and stuff, versus like being it's good to be well versed in one thing or another, try not to spread yourself too thin, but having that underlying really honed skill set of vanilla will really set you further along than being an expert at any type of framework will be, because frameworks come and go, and in 10 years Vue probably might not even be a thing. Who knows what it'll be in 10 years. The technology and web development world is changing so rapidly that who knows.
Well, I think that's a really good point too, because one of the things I was thinking of when you were explaining that, Sean, was Mike and I kind of went through this where when we were doing in college, when we were doing our embedded programming, we learned assembly code because we were working with like embedded systems. We learned assembly code, but we never really learned any sort of like what a function is, like, what do you do? Like, it was very rudimentary what we learned. And then literally the next class was like, okay, we're now doing more advanced embedded systems. It's all in C code. You've never taken a C code class. Go ahead and make it work on this in this like microcontroller. And so like you're literally thrown into a situation where you don't know any of the syntax from C. You don't have any programming classes in the class, except this is like your first programming class, and you're also trying to set up the hardware to actually like flash lights and stuff. So like every single step is brand new to you, and where like maybe it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, swim bitch. Like, here, kick you in the pool, swim bitch. Yeah. Like, I mean, maybe that's it. I mean, that's not the greatest way to put it, but like maybe that's like a valid teaching method. But at the same point, it's also very discouraging for people who literally had no experience. I think Mike had some programming experience from high school at that point. Same with me. I had some programming experience from high school, so like I at least knew what variables and stuff were in strings. There were people there that were like, "What the hell's a string? What are you talking about? Like a rope? Like what do you mean?" Like literally no idea.
What do you mean, Matt? We don't write code. Now write this code.
Yeah, that was a classic line. We don't write code.
Yeah, and then we had a lab test where we were told many times before the lab test, we do not write code in this class. You will not be writing any code in this class. You will just have to go to your books and kind of copy paste the code. And we're like, okay, that's fine. And we're like, how do we prepare for this lab test? Just read your your code, make sure you know where in the book some code samples are and stuff like that, and then we get to the lab test. The first question is, now write some code, get it done in C, and we've never done it, so that's fine.
That's moving on. I think I took like a 3 out of 11 or something, but
yeah,
at the end of the day, I mean, it's not something I'm proud of, but I mean, I don't know, way the road, I guess.
yeah, that wasn't the best way to teach in my honest opinion, but regardless, with that being said, I don't know, I don't really have much more to add to this conversation. Does anyone else have anything they want to throw in?
I think we're good, myself.
Yeah, I don't know. I think we covered a lot. I think we talked about most of the main points. Again, a lot of things will probably change between now and I think September is what they're shooting for release. I know that if anybody wants to check out the new functions API for Vue, they're going to be releasing an alpha next month, I believe. There's more information on that in the RFC and the Vue Discord server as well. I don't know if people want to look for that and stuff, but if anybody's interested, that'll be really cool. I know I'm looking forward to checking out some of they're working with it as experimental. I think it'll be behind a flag in the Vue CLI, is I think how they're going to be rolling it out, but we'll have to see for sure.
I think it's a plugin.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
It's a plugin. Correct. Cool. Thanks, guys, for letting me come on here, and I really enjoyed having web news with you. And massive shouts to the podcast and the community. Cool. That's all I got.
Alrighty, well, I guess we can run the old conclusion then.